Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beyond the Big Six podcast. I'm Connor Bromley. I'm joined by Niall Bromley, and I'm joined by Big Tone. Anth is here as well. True to his word, he has showed up, even though Newcastle dropped a stinker in the Weird Time Derby, which is where we are going to start. And we'll start with you, Tony, because I think it's important. Obviously, me and Niall are maybe a bit we'll be gleaming, and it's fair to say that you'll not be gleaming. But what does
I was just going to say, can I just say, Connor's just surprised us with that new intro, and it's absolutely deafened me, by the way. I was not expecting it whatsoever.
I didn't think it was that loud.
I didn't get the sound, so
I was like,
I'm good.
whoa.
So you didn't get the sound. You got too much sound. I got just right. I was Goldilocks.
Yeah, I got deafened.
Anyway, Tone, what do you think this result tells you about Newcastle United? Because a lot of the discourse that I have seen from Newcastle after this game has been very much the mentality was bad, they weren't up for it, maybe didn't value the game as much as they should have, the preparation wasn't good enough, a lot of question marks for Eddie Howe, which, to be honest, I was quite surprised to see the amount of reaction that has been so negative towards Eddie Howe. And I get that after losing a derby game, it's sore. And it's horrible. It's the worst thing you can really have, I suppose, as a football fan. But what has the reaction been on Tyneside in your eyes? And is it justified, the questions that people are asking?
To a degree. I mean, there is a lot of head loss across the fan base, and there's some wild things coming out. But on the whole, like the players just didn't look up for it. It was almost as though the occasion was lost upon them. None of them were up for the fight. You're hard pressed to pick out a member of the squad there that actually made something happen, and there wasn't that bite in that fight that the Sunderland side seemed to have. The Sunderland players seemed to get the occasion. Yeah, like up front or just completely toothless. But I suppose that can be said for both sides. Really, it was a defensive game. It was cagey, much like what Niall said earlier in the last podcast. It was a cagey affair. Nobody wanted to lose, and it was just a bit of a clanger from Baltimore that cost for the game. Unfortunately, I mean that's at the other end. We're celebrating a fantastic win, but just a split second, and he's reacted, and potentially Chow gets that at the back post to not it clear, but he's made that snap decision, and it's happened the way it has. So it'll be interesting to see how he picks himself up from that. With it being of the magnitude that it was. But yeah, very disappointing. You want to see more from your players in a derby match. And that fight just wasn't there. Once we went to go behind, we'd never looked like creating or doing anything. It was just sapped the life out of us. So yeah, very disappointing. So much so I've needed a couple of days to recover.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I'd be the same. There's a lot though to dig out from this game now. Even though it wasn't a great game of football, it's fair to say. I think if you were a neutral, you might have enjoyed the sort of aggression of it, but in terms of clear-cut chances, there wasn't a lot there. But I think what I've found interesting in the discourse post-game has been the discussion that Sunderland wanted it more, Sunderland understood the game more, Sunderland were more prepared for the game. And even though Sunderland only had one shot on target, they didn't create many chances in the game. I mean, they probably created one more chance than Newcastle. I think Isidore had probably genuinely the only chance of the game that was open play. Newcastle had a couple of long range shots, and that was it. I don't think Newcastle ever really tested Roofs or the Sunderland defence that much in the game. But there was a lot of discourse about Sunderland wanting it more. Do you think that's true? Do you think it was a more important game for Sunderland? I mean, and especially as well, I'm seeing the reaction from Newcastle and the reaction is telling me that this game meant a lot to Newcastle as much as it meant to Sunderland. So I think from the fan bases, that isn't true. But do you think that the Newcastle players and maybe the Newcastle staff didn't, I don't know, maybe underestimated the game and its importance?
Absolutely not. I don't think that's the case at all. I've seen a lot of videos, Talk Sport, and other various podcasts from the Newcastle end of it and the Sunderland end of it, and I don't buy into the wanted more narrative. And I know Ant said it, and I know a lot of people have said it. I don't think that is the case. I don't think Newcastle wanted it just as much as Sunderland did. Those players wanted to win the game. They know exactly what it was. I know Sunderland were first, all the second balls, and we get all that. But I just think that was more to do with the fact. I know we joke about atmosphere and stuff, but we've seen, and Ant knows this from St James's Park, it's that atmosphere. We were there, Connor. It was unbelievable. The best I've ever been in, no matter what. You go as an away supporter, you kind of tear the Newcastle fans because they're massively outnumbered. They're in the top corner. To go out there and to play, yeah, Eddie Howe, I do think got his tactics wrong. I think he was too negative to start the game. I'll come on to that shortly, but I think to come into that, Newcastle, we're always going to need to come into that game by a bit of magic or a bit of luck, which, could have possibly happened. And I thought Sunderland just did really well to snuff it out. And yes, Sunderland didn't create, Sunderland created next to nothing as well. But I think once Sunderland went 1-0 up, they were never, ever going to take them risks. They knew they were going to be able to keep Newcastle at bay. They weren't going to take those risks to risk stretching the game to let Newcastle with, top class players exploit them spaces. They're just not going to do that when what they were doing was working. In my opinion, like I say, this is just an opinion, but I honestly think the way that Sunderland set up, they defended so well, and I actually think Newcastle defended very well as well. Apart from that one moment, I actually think both sides did do their defensive jobs very well. I think both sides were well structured and well organised and well set up. I don't agree with the tactics of Eddie Howe, but I think what they were trying to do, they were well set up. I just think as well, not using it as an excuse, but Newcastle did have less time to prepare. They had a game a few days before, which possibly wouldn't have helped the case of, losing all the second balls. Let's be honest. We don't want to use that, but let's be honest, that is going to be a factor. But I just think Sunderland did very well to stop any threat that Newcastle had on that game. And like I say, I can't be a part of wanted it more because I don't think there's one Newcastle United player sat there and went, I'm not really that bothered. I'll take a point. It didn't happen. They wanted that. It didn't work out for them in that game. Cagey game, but I think Sunderland defended so well, kept them at bay. Once I went 1-0 up, I just honestly don't. I think Sunderland knew that they could just keep on doing what they were doing. They weren't going to get more players up the pitch because it just Newcastle have still got top players, as I said, and they're not going to let them find them pockets of space. They're not going to let them do it. Not when they're 1-0 up at home in a game they are desperate to win. And that's the way I say it. But yeah, I know you probably say it differently, but that's me.
You see, I mean, I thought it straight away to Tony, but I thought that Newcastle set up for a draw. I thought they set up for a 0-0 draw. I was absolutely shocked that they were so negative to start the game.
Yeah,
but you were saying that they came to win the game. I don't think that they came.
Well, I think they did.
No, I think they came to draw the game.
I think they came defensively. I don't think they came to draw the game. I think that they were hoping that they started Anthony Elanga. Yeah, but they started Anthony Elanga and Anthony Gordon for the pace.
Sunderland's best player, by the way. Anthony Elanga, Sunderland's best player.
I'll be happy to talk about him soon because I was very surprised by the way he played. But like I said, they started with pace on the wings for that reason. I think they were trying to soak up pressure that they thought that we were going to give straight on, and then they were going to hit us on the break. But if you watch Sunderland all season, Sunderland are slow starters. They're slow starters into games. Newcastle should have possibly come on to Sunderland and try to get an early goal, and that would have shut the crowd up. And that's what I would have done if I was Eddie Howe. He didn't go that way. But I don't think they came to draw the game. I think he tried something that didn't work due to what he had to deal with fatigue and everything else.
Tony?
In my opinion.
So going off Howe's press conference today ahead of tomorrow night's game. He said they set up the same way they did against Everton when they won, and he says on a different day, they won 4-1. Um, I I don't really see that, if I'm honest. I think we were far more cagey um, at the stadium, I like personally. Um, Anthony Alanga, I am really struggling with. I was quite excited when we signed the guy. Um, looked talented, very quick, did wonderful things at Forest, and I'm just not seeing it. And I don't know, like that's a 55 million pound player, and I'm really struggling. I really want him to do well. He seems like a lovely lad. Whether things aren't quite right for him at the moment, like living up here, or I don't know. Something's not right. His confidence is absolutely through the floor. You can see that. Um, first touch, and his crossing's just not there. I think he's got one assist in all of the appearances he's made. He's had a few opportunities where he's just played it straight at the keeper, but he's not the only one. Anthony Gordon has been absolutely atrocious, probably for the last season and a bit. Yes, he's scored goals, but they're penalties. Now, there's something to be said for a good penalty taker, but the few seasons ago, he was absolutely on fire. He's one of the best wingers in the league. I wouldn't even put him in the top 5 or even in the top 10 at this point. He's nowhere near it. He's just miles off it. There's a few players, Sandro Tonali. I absolutely love the guy, fantastic player, but he's just not right at the moment. Whether he's just tired after being ill a few weeks back, I just don't know. There's so many things, and the worrying thing is, in the coming weeks and months, we've got a lot of injuries defensively, and at fullback we only have Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento. If there's an injury there, you're looking at possibly putting Jacob Murphy at right back, and then you're looking at putting Alex Murphy in at left back. It's going to be like a patchwork quilt. So it's very bleak at the back.
Sorry,
And
just to
with the
come in
amount of
there.
fixtures we've got,
Sorry, just to quickly come in. I don't know if you know. I've read a few things about. Is there a recall clause on Matt Target's loan or not?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Plus, he wouldn't be registered in the squad, in the 25-man squad, so he wouldn't be able to play.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
No, he'll be able to play in January though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he could
they'll
in
have a
January.
recall clause in January because that's standard in every single loan. So they could definitely recall him on January 1st and he could play.
Yeah.
Potentially, but I don't think that's a solution really.
Listen, I'm doing all right at Middlesbrough.
Yeah. I've seen he's scored a few goals and he's created a few, so he's doing all right. But I just don't know. I don't think that's the answer really. So yeah, there's a lot of the away form and all the rest of it. It is like a tricky period for Eddie Howe, certainly. Probably one of the more difficult spells that he's had at the club. Um, I agree with Neil. I think tactically he got it wrong. Possibly he would hold his hands up and admit that. But yeah, on another day, he's saying that it worked. But I don't see what the game plan was, and I think he got it wrong. The
I think
substitutes as well, that just didn't work at all.
I think what for me has been quite telling in what I've seen from a lot of the Newcastle reaction is the gap that existed between the two clubs when they last played in the FA Cup was vast. It was a chasm. It wasn't even a gap. You could try to do a million trucks in the gap between the two teams. And it was only last year. I know it was pretty much 2 years ago, but it actually was at the start of 2024. And I think the thing that I'm seeing from Newcastle fans is almost looking at what Sunderland have done recruitment wise and looking at what Sunderland are right now probably reminds them a little bit of what Newcastle were at their best. Sort of that second season, well, Eddie Howe's first season where they finished in the Champions League. Not saying Sunderland will finish in the Champions League, but I think when you look at this Sunderland team, you see a lot of the things that Eddie Howe team was good at: the aggression, the tenacity, the desire to go till the end. And Sunderland have got all the things football fans kind of want from their team, which I think is exactly what Eddie Howe had when he first came into Newcastle. Was a team that fans of other clubs were jealous of because they looked at it and thought, why aren't we like that? Why aren't we that aggressive? Why aren't we doing the things that they're doing? And I think a lot of the rhetoric I've seen from Newcastle fans after this game is looking at this Sunderland team and sort of questioning, well, how have they managed to, in one summer, spend, 180 million quid and build a team that has all the trademarks of what we love about the Eddie Howe team, but for whatever reason, our Eddie Howe team no longer looks like what that Sunderland team. I mean, Sunderland, I would argue, at times bullied Newcastle in that game. I thought Sunderland were physically far more dominant than Newcastle in that game. Their ability to win second balls in the game, the midfield battle, which I think Sunderland did win overall. Xhaka and Siddiqui in particular were dominant in that middle area of the field. And these are things that, when we got promoted in the summer as Sunderland fans, I looked at Newcastle and I worried about things like that. I worried about Newcastle's physical threats and their pace and their counter-attacking ability. And we saw none of that on Sunday. And I know we can talk about the fact Sunderland didn't create chances, and they didn't. But I think Sunderland, once, as Niall said, once they got the goal ahead, they knew that they could probably see the game out. We've seen it a lot from Sunderland this season. They're defensively pretty strong. And while we can look at the statistics and say Sunderland didn't create much in the game, there's no doubt in my mind that Sunderland deserved to win the game. I thought Sunderland applied themselves better, were still more of a threat. And Newcastle, in my view, offered nothing going forward. And it comes back down to looking at this Eddie Howe team has now currently got no identity. That's what I would view them as. They have no discernible identity as to what that team is. They can win games because they've got quality players, but there isn't a massive identity there. But Niall, I don't know, bounce off what I've just said there. I haven't really thrown you a question, but I've thrown a lot of discourse out.
Yeah. I feel like we've spent a lot of time talking about Newcastle. I feel a bit sorry for Anthony, but I'll try and make it as short, as sweet as possible, because I know it is difficult, as you said. When you lose a derby, we've all been there. It's horrible, but yeah, I'm still fairly sure that Newcastle will find their rhythm. If I'm being honest, I think that there's obviously issues there which I don't understand, and possibly has a better idea because he's in and around it all the time. But as a neutral, so to speak, when I look at some of the things, like he brought Joe Willock on Sunday ahead of Jacob Ramsey, so then you're talking, you've got, it's like £100 million worth of player in Anthony Elanga and Jacob Ramsey, who just are having no effect. And Newcastle supporters and the club have spoken a lot about PSR and stuff like that. And I kind of look at it and I kind of think, well, it's a run off your own back in a lot of ways, because your recruitment just this in the summer has obviously not been right. And listen, the Alexander Isak thing is totally unprecedented, and that would have caused them so many problems. And I totally understand that. But for me, as well, Ross Wilson's obviously in there now, and they've got new people, so I think that will be better. But I just think that would be where my frustration as a Newcastle fan would be, the fact that it goes back to the recruitment just not being good enough, and it means that Eddie Howe was having to stick to the same players or rotate a little bit more than what he has done in the past. But that means that your high intensity and stuff like that can't happen. There is no way they're playing 3 games a week or 2 games a week, depending on which way you look at it. There's no way that they can sustain that style of football, what got them all the success they've got now, with that many games of football. It's just not going to happen. And like I say, I just think they've spent so much of their transfer kitty on Premier League players like Elanga and Ramsey, who cost more money. You're paying a premium for those players. Then if they'd just done a little bit more scouting and recruitment, they could have had players who weren't Premier League, a bit like what Sunderland have done, who would be good enough to fit into that style and not spend that money, and then they would have been able to get more of those players and have more squad depth with more quality for all the competitions that they're in. I think it's one of them. I still think they'll come good. I still think they'll have a very good season. I still think that they'll challenge for Champions League football. I think they'll win their next 2 games. I think they'll beat Fulham tomorrow. Then I think they'll beat Chelsea on Saturday. And Eddie Howe will probably get the away form right because he's a very, very good manager. They're on this a very similar point total of what they were on last season at this point. So, and then they went on, and you speak to a lot of supporters, and they'll say it was the best season in their lifetime as a Newcastle supporter. So, this is the thing. It's not the be all and end all. Right now, it's gloomy because they've lost a derby, and the football isn't as great at what it was, but I still think there is not that big of a corner to turn for it to get back to what it was, and that's the way I look at it from a neutral perspective. But that doesn't mean that I haven't texted all my mates taking the mick out of them because Sunderland won a derby game because that's what it's for. But and the reality of it is that game is coming around in March or April or wherever. We don't know when it's going to be, but that game is coming around again in not that long time, and the tables could easily turn. And that's what football is. Right now, it's the end of the world for them. We're on sky high. That could all change in a couple of weeks, and that's just the way it is.
Fair enough. Is there anything else to add on this, Tony, or should we move on?
I mean, I could talk more about it if you want us to. That's absolutely fine. In terms of the direction and the strategic sort of side of things from Eddie Howe, I think we've moved on as a side, or we're trying to move on as a side, because now a lot of sides now will come and sit deep and say, come on and break we're down, instead of having the counter-attacking football that we used to do, going back and forward, and the high intensity game. Like Niall said, you can't do that day in, day out. And when you're having a break of maybe 2 days, it's too much of a turnaround, and we don't really have the squad depth, the quality and depth anyway, to be able to say, right, this is how we're going to play, and you go all hammer and tongs all of the time. It can't happen. That's where injuries crop up and what have you. Just to go back to something you said before as well, that physicality in the middle of the park, it just proves how important Joe Linton is to the Newcastle side as well, because that physicality that he gives you is just unparalleled in the league. There's not a player really like him. So I think that made a big difference. And there's certainly frustrations on my part, like Niall said about the two signings in Alanga and in Jacob Ramsey. Jacob Ramsey's barely kicked a football for it. Now, is that because he's not up to scratch in terms of what Eddie Howe expects of the players, or is that just because he thinks Joe Willock's better? Now, if he thinks Joe Willock's a better player, why did we sign him in the first place? There's a lot of questions there. There's a lot of unrest in the background as far as I'm concerned as well. Especially given that there's a like Man City sniffing around Tino Livramento, who's been absolutely fantastic since coming back. Bit of an off day against your boys on Sunday there, but he's been Mr. Consistent, but potentially England's right back in the coming up international tournament. Um, so is that situation needs resolved. There's a lot going on in the background, and I think Ross Wilson's going to be a very busy man in the coming weeks and months.
Well, there we go. So Sunderland win the derby, and we haven't spent too much time applauding Sunderland, but if you do want to watch some applauding of Sunderland, go on my YouTube channel, the Connor Bromley YouTube channel. There's plenty of stuff there if you want to see Sunderland content. Now, what are you going to say?
I just feel like we haven't talked about something at all. We've just slaughtered poor Aranth for 25 minutes.
Yeah, it's not a case though. Like
nice Sunderland plug there, by the way.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Well, I just sort of think that we can all kind of just repeat what everyone said about Sunderland and be like, yeah, they've done well, they've won the game, they've had a really good start of the season. But I think the narrative from this game, if we're being honest, as a attempted neutral podcast, the narrative from the game, I think, is all about Newcastle United, because the fallout from it has been pretty significant. So yeah, we focus a lot on Newcastle in this one, but it must be said, and we have said it, Sunderland did deserve to win the game, and yeah, they're heading in the right direction. And speaking of teams heading in the right direction, Aston Villa keeping a title push. Is it fair to say they're keeping a title push alive, Niall? I'm not 100% sure, but big win at West Ham, twice behind. We will talk about the relegation picture, so we'll put West Ham in that section when we do that. So just on Aston Villa, a 3-2 win at West Ham. Morgan Rogers scoring a winner, a very, very nice winner. Another goal from range as well for Aston Villa, which is something they just love doing. And I think at this point, I can no longer really hit Aston Villa with the scoring a lot of goals from range, because if you just keep doing it, then I suppose you have to say they're just very good at it, and therefore it's not luck. But yeah, Aston Villa, are we willing to put them in the title race? They've got Arsenal coming up as well in a couple of games' time, haven't they? So that's going to be really interesting if they can win down at the Emirates or get a draw.
I mean, I said on this podcast last time we were on, and I said no, I didn't think they were. I just thought they were in good form, but they just keep pulling things out of the bag. And West Ham, they're really struggling, and as you said, we'll get onto that. But going away there isn't an easy thing to do to get 3 points, and I think they've come from behind twice. Yeah, they've come from behind twice. They've conceded a goal in the first minute, which is obviously that's the worst time to concede a goal, because all your tactics and your game plan, everything goes out the window straight away, and then you've got to try and find a reaction. They did that, and they've got quality, which we all, and myself, said that they were stale and they needed some fresh legs, and I don't think they do. Obviously, they don't. They just needed a few weeks to settle in, and they look at that start of the season and think, imagine we just picked up a win, and imagine we're instead of a 0-0 draw, we picked up a win, whatever, because then they'd be sitting top of the league. They're having a fantastic season. They're really going for it. I can't see them slowing anytime soon. Obviously, they've got Europe in there as well, which they seem to be managing very well. Aston Villa have got a big squad. They've had that for a few years, and they're doing very well with it right now. And yeah, I'm still reluctant to put them in a title. They're in a title race because of where they are in December, but I'm still reluctant to say that they're going to be there come sort of March, April when it matters. But I hope they are, because it's what football needs. But I can't say it at the minute. But I hope they are.
I think, Tony, if I was to put it maybe a different way, we've got clearly Arsenal and Man City are the two favourites. But then after that, I think Aston Villa are the third team, because Chelsea are a ways off it. Liverpool are having an absolute stinker. Obviously, Newcastle maybe could have been in the conversation, but they're having a stinker. So, other than that, there isn't another team I would look at. Obviously, Spurs and Man United are well off the pace as well. Villa are probably the third team that you would say are third favourites to win the title this season, wouldn't you? So, by that, I kind of think you do have to kind of tentatively say that they're in this title race. I mean, they could lose their next 3 games, but so could Arsenal and so could Man City.
They're certainly up there. They're putting themselves in the conversation. You've got to have a ticket to be in the raffle, don't you? So they're giving a great account of themselves. I just expected them to come good. I know they had a rocky start at the start of the season, but I think personally, I just expect them to come good. They've got a great squad, some really talented players. Unai Emery is a fantastic manager. It was always going to happen. It was just a case of them just kicking into gear and getting a run of form going. But yeah, I wouldn't have said they were in the title race, but it's hard not to, because I mean they're up there.
Yep, I would agree. There is nothing else you can say other than they are pretty much in the title race right now. Until they fall out of it, and until they fall 6 or 7 points behind, they are in it. Right, the relegation picture, very interesting. And you know me, I love a relegation battle. My favourite thing in the world, especially since Sunderland are not involved, is the relegation battle. So West Ham, they lost against Villa. Had no real shame in losing against Aston Villa. Leeds get a good draw at Brentford, and I think they played reasonably well as well. And Leeds have got 5 points from the last 3 games since they've switched to that 5 at the back. Or Brentford maybe in the conversation. I'm not sure. Fulham won at Burnley, which I think all in all, I would argue rules Burnley out. I feel like they've lost 7 in a row in the Premier League now. It feels all doom and gloom there. They had to win that one. And Nottingham Forest, put Spurs to the sword, which is a common thing right now for teams in the Premier League. But yeah, Niall, what do you make of the relegation battle currently? West Ham in third bottom right now. They're actually picking up points at a lower rate than what they did under Graham Potter in his whole tenure, which is interesting because in my head, West Ham have done far better since Nuno's come in, but actually they haven't compared to Potter since when he came in January to when he left in, what was it, August, September. So feels like West Ham are doing better, but their points tally isn't saying
that. Who's going down? I mean, it is. I have no idea at this current time. I think it's going to be the highest points total ever, in my opinion. I think West Ham went down with, was it 44? Something ridiculous like 42. I can't hear you.
Our fourth bottom had 44. So it was 42 for West Ham. Birmingham had 44.
Right, okay. Sorry, you cut out there. I didn't hear you for a second.
Yeah, I accidentally had myself muted.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. I got told off for that, by the way. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, like I say, I feel like it could be in and around that number. I really do feel like it could be in and around that number. I think it's going to be so high. Although West Ham are on 13 now, maybe it won't be. I don't know. But I don't know. Because now I'm thinking about it. I know I do this quite often where I convince myself mid-conversation, but I think West Ham are the key, aren't they? They're the key. They're 3 adrift at the minute. If they might go down unless they can find a big run of form. Other than that, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know who's going down.
Well,
I haven't got a clue. It's such a...
He has Opta, and we often bring this up, and I like looking at this Opta table. So the end column here, this is the relegation odds. So currently, Wolves have got a 99.36. I think Wolves are gone. Burnley, 86%, they're gone. And then Opta's saying West Ham, third. So they've got them 46%. Leeds, 40. Forest, 14. Fulham, just under 6. Sunderland at 1.92. Bournemouth at 2. Brentford at 1.37. Now, that is the only one that I disagree with. I think Brentford, if we actually look at the real Premier League table, right? So Brentford are currently on the end, there's the points. Brentford are currently on 20. And I just currently think that they don't look massively impressive. They're really poor away from home. And I just wonder if they could potentially get sucked in. But I think if Leeds, they've got a decent run of fixtures sort of over the next period of games. They've got Palace at home and Sunderland away coming up. I mean, they could look at that and think they'll get 3 points from that. Leeds get 3 points from that. They go up to 19. And it's hard then to not say that teams up here, if they don't pick up points like Fulham and Brentford and even Bournemouth, could potentially get sucked into that. I don't know. Feels like maybe somebody might surprisingly get relegated.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I was starting to think, could that possibly be Bournemouth? In the first 20 minutes of that game last night, Man United were all over them, but then it got a bit crazy and both teams decided that defending wasn't fun anymore. And they would just go a bit nuts, and it ended up being an absolutely fantastic game to watch, but it was a bit defensively chaotic. But yeah, I mean, Bournemouth have not won in a long time. I can't remember the last time Bournemouth won a game of football. There must be, I mean, there's 5 there. I reckon, sorry, there's 6 there. I think it must be 7 or 8, maybe, since I last won a game. So that could be a real problem. Don't get us wrong, they've got fantastic players. And touched on last time in the podcast, Anton Semenyo with the buyout clause, 65 million quid. I don't know why someone's paying that. Somebody is paying that. I mean, you've got surely someone is going to pay that. There'll be a club sitting there licking their lips at the thought of that price. So that could be a massive problem for them. Could Bournemouth get sucked in? I would reluctant to say yes because they've got a very good manager and a very good team, but they're struggling.
Well, they're 7 without a win, so they've not won
7.
since October. That's why. Tony, where are you at with the relegation scrap? Who are you looking at and worried at? Is there anyone outside of Leeds and West Ham that you think could get dragged in?
Particularly, it's hard to look past those two, if I'm honest. I think obviously Leeds have really picked up in recent weeks, so getting some cracking results. But West Ham, they're just they've they've getting a few points on the board there, but like the strike department's just lackluster at best. Um, so yeah, I don't really. I, I, I'm putting them in that third relegation spot, to be honest. That because like you said before, Burnley's gone, and I mean Wolves, Christ, like short of a minor miracle, it wouldn't be a minor one; it would be a major one. They would have to, yeah. So yeah, I tend to think that probably West Ham's, going to spend a season in the Championship next year.
I think West Ham would spend more than a season if in the Championship if they got relegated. I think they would really struggle. The only thing I would say with West Ham though is that when they've been in tricky positions in the past, they often invest. They often do buy in players, and I think if they were to bring in a really good centre forward, then you would start to have different questions. But I think what is important for me is looking at this is I think Leeds will I don't think Leeds will do anything more than steadily pick up points at the rate they are right now. They'll roughly stay at a point per game, which means that we should have a relegation scrap at the end of the season. I don't think Leeds are gonna they're not gonna go past 40 points. I'd be shocked if they go past 40 points. Interestingly, it's Leeds versus West Ham on the final day of the season at the London Stadium. So could
I,
it be like
I
a
don't.
shootout?
I'm not quite sure how much breathing space PSR wise, and obviously the squad cost ratio that's going to come in next season. That's another factor that they kind of just have on the back burner there. I don't know where West Ham sit with that because there was talk of Paqueta, you know, leaving um, at the back end of the window there to go to Villa, and why would you want to give up an asset like that if you weren't in a scenario where you know cash flow was an issue? Because they have spent a lot of money on various different bits and pieces to that squad. Um, I don't know where they are financially, and there's a lot of aggro behind the scenes still. Supporters really not happy with the current board, so I don't know. I don't know where they are financially.
Niall, anything else to add on the relegation picture, or are you happy with West Ham and Leeds being in a shootout potentially on the final day of the season?
Yeah, I didn't realise that was the last game. That could be a hell of a watch. That or somebody getting dragged into it, which often can happen. It's a bit strange, isn't it? That if you look, Sunderland are currently on 26 points as a newly promoted team. That saves you last season. Leicester got relegated with 25. So it's crackers. I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting Christmas period, and I think in January it'll become a little bit more evident as to who is the relegation battle and who's the rest.
I think it's really weird as well. If we look, I mean, I'll put the Premier League table back up here because the Premier League table right now has literally no shape to it. Normally, by this point in a season, the difference, I mean, the points on the end here, the difference between Crystal Palace in fifth down to Brentford in 15th is 6 points. Like, that's absolutely mental. That Everton were like 5th last weekend, and then they've lost a game, and they're down all the way to like 9th in the table. The league table is taken no structure at the moment. That's why when you look at, like, say, Newcastle, we spoke about at the start. I mean, fundamentally, if Newcastle were to win their next 2 games, there's a very good chance that they'll be sitting somewhere like 6th or 7th in the Premier League, and it looks very different. The Premier League, I don't think, has ever been as competitive in terms of basically from 4th place down to here, like Forest or Brentford. All them teams just seem like a much of a muchness, which is why somebody could surprisingly get dragged into a relegation scrap. But I just think it's interesting how compact it is this year.
Yeah. Sorry.
I didn't really direct that at anyone, so fair enough.
Yeah, it is. It's crackers, and considering I think there's only 20 points between top of the league and the relegation zone in December. That sounds a bit crackers, really, to think about it. So, yeah, anybody could get sucked in. I don't think anybody can breathe easily. Well, certain clubs can, but I still think there's a lot of clubs in there will be looking over the shoulder, and you have a couple of defeats. Anything can happen. I know there's a lot being said about. They were talking on TalkSport today about Sunderland and AFCON, and Sunderland were the most betted on team to get relegated in the last 2 weeks in the bookies, because obviously the odds are obviously relatively high, and the fact that they're losing players to AFCON. I mean, to me, it's not as big as a deal as what the media is making out to be. No, Sadiqi's a massive loss. Ronaldo's a massive loss, but they're still keeping Granit Xhaka. All their strikers are staying. Simon Adingra, it didn't get picked, so he's staying. That star signing hasn't played all season anyway because he's been injured. It's for me, it's a bit like just having a few injuries. That's the way it kind of is, and that happens. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I think because the media and TalkSport were talking about it, they're saying, there's all these players leaving. Well, some of the players on the list are leaving. Were 4th choice goalkeeper, Blondie, who's never ever played a game for her, is on that list. So you've got to look at it through. There's 4 players who are in and around the squad, and there's 2 who are starters week in, week out. I know there was 4 at the weekend, but that rotates. There's 2 that start week in, week out. So I don't think that I don't see. I understand why people have put the bets on, but I think it's a little bit thingy. But I certainly think that people will be looking over their shoulders.
You've just taken that conversation in a totally different way. I was not expecting you to talk about Sunderland's AFCON when we brought it up there.
Well, you said who would get sucked in, and Sunderland are the most betted on team, so I didn't.
I think in AFCON, the team that's going to be hurt the most is Fulham, because they're going to lose Bassi, Iwobi, and the guy they just brought this summer from AC Milan, Chukwueze.
Yeah,
the winger who's been doing really well. They're losing the 3 of them, and I think Brentford lose Sharda, don't they? Or is he injured? No, Sharda's injured at the minute. Brentford also lose a few players though, which could be pretty detrimental for them. Right, just as we sort of finish off, Wolves pretty unlucky at Arsenal. I think we've all decided that Wolves are relegated. I think it's fair to say, but they do have Brentford this weekend at home, and Wolves do have to win at some point. Are we thinking maybe, Tony, Wolves could win this weekend against Brentford, who are one of the worst away teams in the Premier League? And I'll actually throw another thing out there. If Wolves don't win the game this weekend, could we maybe start talking about them maybe going like a full season without winning a game? Because they've played Burnley at home, they've played Leeds at home, they obviously have played Brentford at home after this weekend, and they've picked up nothing from those games. What do you make of that? Do you think they could maybe break the duck this weekend under Rob Edwards?
Started scoring goals at least, because that was a problem for a little while. But yeah, I just don't see it. I really don't. It is just going. It's an absolute catastrophe down there. Like I just, I I struggled because I saw the post match interview with Rob Edwards after the game, and he says the pundit says to him, it's just you haven't got the look, have you? And he just laughed, and I was like, Yeah, it's not really a laughing matter, mate. Like, you're staring down the barrel. Like, you've moved from a club that's on the up to a club that is, destined to go down. Like I say, pending like a historical shift where they find some unknown talent from underneath the ground that you know is like Erling Haaland-esque. They're doomed. And like I just I don't see anything other. Like I think Brentford can go there and get a result. I don't think they just got nothing about them. They really haven't. I mean, the thing there, getting that goal at Arsenal there the other day, it almost caught everybody by surprise. But then Arsenal go up the other end and score. So like they just can't hold it. Do you know what I mean? Like the team's just broken.
I think as well for Wolves, Niall, that if they do say lose this game, if they're sat on 2 points going into January, they'll potentially have a fire sale because there'll be players like Strand Larson and Gomez and the other Brazilian lad they've got in the midfield whose name I've just forgotten. Is that Andre? Is that his name?
Andre,
Um, yeah,
Andre.
they've got a few different players anyway that have probably still got value. To get the most value out of them players, you probably want to sell them as Premier League players, don't you? So it's potential there that they might fire sale in January because they know that they can't stay up. And then I think that probably takes a little bit of pressure off Rob Edwards as well because they'll be like, well, we sold our best players, and it gives him a chance to maybe get a bit more of a fair crack at it next season. But do you think that could happen? That Wolves throw the towel in January and just go, do you know what? No. And then alternatively, maybe if they win at the weekend and they go into the Christmas period, maybe they win another game and they've got 8 points in January. Do they potentially even go the other way and go, do you know what? We're going to go gung ho and try and save the season.
No, I don't see the latter happening. I mean, the ridiculous thing is they are still only 11 points off West Ham in third bottom and sitting on 2 points, which is a bit nuts. But no, I don't think they'll do the latter. I think they could well do the first one. They could well sell their players for the money because that's what their ownership does. They've continuously sold their best players every season, brought in a lot of money for them and replaced them and done enough to stay in the league, but it's slowly chipped away and it's slowly chipped away every season they've done it. And now they're at a point where, it's chipped too much away and they can't pull it back. And yeah, if somebody comes in for Strand Larson's probably lost value. I think, was it not 60 million Newcastle bid? Was it something like that in the summer? He's nowhere near that. There's no way that a club pays that for him. Now, maybe he's 40, but you're not going to get 60 for him. So yeah,
He's just signed that bumper deal as well, hasn't he? So that puts his cost up to the club. So if they do sell him, they sell him at a loss as well. So there's a lot of finances in there as well, isn't there?
yeah, exactly. There you go. So I mean, but the thing is, they might still be able to get 40 for Strand Larson now. But if they do this to the end of the season, which I think they will, they might only get 30 for him. So it's even worse. So yeah, if the offer comes in, if they're sitting at 2 points in January still, yeah, I think they will start making those decisions. And what a bad decision Rob Edwards has made. I mean, that is, oh my God.
I don't think Middlesbrough though would be in the same position. I mean, we're obviously not going to talk about Middlesbrough because they're not in the Premier League, but I think Middlesbrough have kicked on since he's left. Like it's been a blessing for them because they
I
weren't
know.
playing that well under Edwards.
How must he be feeling right now? It's crackers.
No, it's not good for Wolves, and I think that they'll potentially have a fire sale. I mean, certainly if I was West Ham and we talk about their need for a striker, if Strand Larson's available on a cut price, do you maybe make that sort of move? Do you maybe go for a loan deal where you have to make it a permanent if you stay up at the end of the season or something? Does that maybe make sense for West Ham? I don't know, but it should be interesting.
I'd rather say Neville striker, the one who scored at the weekend. I think he's a unit.
He's just young though, isn't he? I don't know if they'll maybe try and keep him. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe.
In terms of the games, we kind of touched on Bournemouth scored 4 at Old Trafford. Very hard to gauge. Sorry, Bournemouth right now. They're a bit of a weird team. And then Palace, Everton, Brighton, they all lost pretty comprehensively this past weekend. I don't think it's really worth talking about them losing to City, Chelsea, and Liverpool respectively. So I think that just about sums up the podcast for the day. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Oh, Tony, go on.
Player of the weekend.
Oh, yeah, keep forgetting this. Player of the weekend. Niall, who's yours? Don't say Voldemort.
That would have been harsh.
Let's do
But,
that.
nah, I can't. Nick, nah. Oh. I mean, if I'm looking through my glasses, I want to say Granit Xhaka, but he isn't.
I tell you who mine is. Morgan Rogers. That's
Well, I
mine.
was just about to say that you've swooped in and stole me, man.
I'm going to jump in before you say somebody, and I'm going to say Callum Hudson-Odoi. What a belter of a goal the second one was. Oh, what a peach.
Okay, well then I'm gonna say, oh God, I'm having to dig deep now. I'm trying to think.
What about a Fulham player? Harry Wilson's in fine form at the minute. Maybe you can give it to him.
Scored a good goal again, didn't he? That, by the way, did people see Emile Smith-Rowe's goal? What on earth is going on there?
Is that the one that the first goal in the game?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where the defender misses it. I wouldn't care. Hartman's been brilliant this season for
I know
them.
you really like Hartman, but yeah, he had a stinger again. I think he was at fault for the second goal as well, wasn't he?
I'm gonna go with Anton Semenyo.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Anne, for a reminder of that and put me on the spot, even though we should remember to do it every week. And thanks everyone for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the channel as well, and we'll catch you next week for more festive magic as we head into the Christmas period. We'll have to figure out when we're going to record as well, because the fixtures are all weird over Christmas, so we'll figure all that out as we get into that time. Yeah, but yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon.